I want to modify our test a little bit, and then we're going to write some new tests to introduce the concept of validation into our series creation. Therefore, in my create series test, right here, I want to assert that the session has something. So assert session has a success key, and this should be equal to series created successfully. Okay, so let's run that test, and I think it should fail right now. Okay, so there's no session set for series. So let's head over back to our controller, and we could actually set up the session right here. So session, call the flash method on the session class, and this is gonna say success key should be equal to exactly the same string that we have right here. Let's run that again, and sure enough, we have green. Now, one thing I want to point out in our test is we're simply testing assert redirect right here, but you remember, if there's a validation rule fail, you are still going to be redirected, or if we have a mistake or an error, we might still be redirected. So to actually make sure that you have a successful test, or a successful test that actually makes sense, make sure you specify a redirect path. So for example, if you want to make sure that the user is redirected to admin/series after the file is successfully uploaded, or after the series is successfully created, then make sure you specify a path. And then in your controller, make sure when you're redirecting the user, you specify that redirect path, right? So, but for now, I'm not going to worry about that because I want to write test for the validation. Okay, so let's jump straight into it. So public function test, a series must be created with a title. Okay, so how do we want to test this validation? We want to make a post request without the title field, and then see if we're actually going to be redirected back with some errors. Okay, so let's just copy this, and I'm going to pull out the title, meaning we didn't pass in the title in the request. We simply passed in description and a file. And then we're going to assert redirect, and the path we're asserting that it was redirected to is admin series create. And we actually can test if the session has errors by using the assert session has errors method, and we can specify that we want to check if there's an error for title. Okay, so assert if we're redirected, and also assert that the session has errors. So let's go ahead and try this out. We'll run this specific test. Yeah, we have a 500. Let's go ahead and see what we have. We disable exception handling to have a better error. So I'll paste that in, run that again, and our error says integrity constraint violation for the failed title. So it means we're actually trying to create the series without the title, meaning our validation rules are not even valid. So let's head over to our controller, and we see right here we're actually referencing a custom object. Therefore, we can reference our validation rules in our custom object. So create series request, and what we could do is right here we have our rules array, so we can say title should be required. Okay, let's run that test one more time. Another error, the given data was invalid, so it throws a validation exception. Now what we're gonna do is head over back to our test and pull out this method, and I think our test should actually succeed. And Laravel is telling us failed asserting that two strings match, and it's telling us this is what we expected, but this is what we have. I'm gonna explain why it does that later, but for now, let's just pull out this assertion for redirect and simply assert that the session has errors. Run that. Yeah, and of course we get green. Let's write another test to make sure that it's created with a description. So I'm just gonna duplicate this, and the test, a series must be created with a description. And rather than passing in a description here, we'll pass in a title and make sure that the session has errors for description. Okay, so let's run that. It fails, but let's try to put in a validation rule for description. So description must be required. Save that, run our test again, and of course it passes. Now let's just do one more for our image, but I think the image is gonna have two, but let's just do one more. Duplicate that, and we're gonna pull out the image in this case and pass in the description, and make sure we say a test series must be created with an image. Okay, so assert session has errors for image. Let's run our test. It fails. Let's make sure we have a validation rule for image should be required. Run that test. Yeah, and it passes. Now, why don't we make sure that the image must be an image? So let's duplicate this test, and would actually pass in the image in this case. So I'm gonna copy this uploaded file, but we're gonna pass in a string. So string invalid image. Okay, then we're gonna assert that we still have errors for image, and you can also assert that the error is actually of a particular type, but we're just gonna leave it as such. Then required is the only validation rule. Let's run the test. I'm sorry, I didn't change the name. So with an image, which is actually an image, run, it fails. But let's just try to put in an image validation to see what we get. Run it one more time, and it passes. Now, Laravel also provides us with a way to test for the dimensions of the image, but we're not going to worry about that now. I think this test suite actually makes sure that we upload a correct image, and the user can create a series, create with a title, description, and an image with a valid image also. So great job in this video. Let's make some progress in the next one.